Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be talking about destructuring. So, to understand destructuring is the simple act of getting variables from an object without having to use something like person.name. So, in this case, if you want to get the name and age of the person object, you would have to use something like let name equals person name, and the same thing for age. In this case, destructuring comes handy because you just need to use name and age, and of course do the equal sign as the object. So these will pretty much destructure those values inside the object, and then once we do node destruction.js, it will show up our values inside those variables, at least in 25. Another option as well we can do is destructuring on arrays. So destructuring arrays, instead of using those curly brackets that we've seen before, we use just the square brackets. And then we can get first color, second color. An example is we use destructuring.js, and then we'll get red and green. Of course, the destructuring here will be based on the position of the array instead of the name, because an array you don't have a key pair in this case, right? It's just the position and value instead of the object. A good thing is if you're using APIs, in case of an object destructuring, it's good to set default values, because in this case our object only has name, it don't have age. So because here we're defaulting age to 0, we're not gonna get any errors into our destructuring. In this case, is all fine, but if we remove it, it would be just undefined, and that would be probably break somewhere in your code if you're not expecting to be undefined. So sometimes if it's very important and you want to at least make your code safe, add defaults to your destructuring. Another thing as well, use nested destructuring in cases where you have an object that has other objects. So in this case we have the object person, has name, but also has another object called address, and address you have city, you have zip, and the destructuring will pretty follow the same principle before, but the only difference is when we call the address, we can destructure inside the object again. So we call name normally, but we call address, and we destructure city and zip just as another object destructuring. And once I clear here and I do node, you're gonna see we have the city, which is Wonderland, and the zip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another important thing is rename variables when necessary, because some objects, they can have bad naming conventions, and for some reason you cannot change, or if you change you're going to break other places. So what you can do is, the moment you destructure your object, you can just do this column and rename your object to person name and person age. Of course, the best naming is usually up to you and up to your project, so just be aware of that. Do destructure function parameters, because oftentimes if you have a function that you just receive an object and then you have to destructure that object inside the code, it's usually a little bit more messy, because it's hard to know what you're expecting and what's not. So what's often and recommended, if you can, is destructure the parameter. So in this case, we have the user, and we have name and age, and we just give the user normally to the function, and the function itself will handle that destructuring on the function parameters. And then on here, if we run, we're gonna have Alice and age 25. Also, you leave your function call less verbose and easier to just understand. Another thing is, don't overuse destructuring. So that's the don't. If you overuse destructuring, sometimes if the object is undefined, it will throw an error. Right here, right now, it's already screaming at us, cannot redeclare. And also, if destructuring, make sure your object's not undefined. Also, another thing is, don't destructure if the assignment's already clear. So in this case, we just have name. If you know in the future will become more variables, you can do destructuring. But if you know it's just that variable, you can just keep normal. Like keep simple. Don't need to overdo something that doesn't need. Also, remember, sometimes even myself I confuse syntax. So you cannot call the alias and the destructuring. You always need to call the destructuring and the renaming that you're giving to the destructure. So if you have name here, name should come